this video, I'm going to show you how to make this super cute button art. This is a fun and really neat way to kind of introduce kids to hand sewing. We're going to be sewing all these buttons on here. I'm going to show you how to do the fabric and everything. This is a fun art piece for the wall, but if you use it in a sewing room or sewing space, you could even, if you decide you want a button later, to sort of snip it off and replace it with another button as well. So let's get started. For this project, you're going to need a pair of scissors. We're going to be using some embroidery floss to sew our buttons on. Now you could use some sewing thread, whatever you have on hand. As a side note, if you're into this color, this is the Coats & Clark embroidery floss in the aquamarine. You'll need some needles. Now I grabbed a couple of sizes just because my buttonholes have a variety of sizes as well. So some of them have a larger hole and you could use a larger needle. Some of them are really tiny, so I grabbed a smaller needle as well. And then you'll need buttons, as I have here lots of different ones. You could do a certain color scheme. You could do some kind of ombre. I just grabbed all different buttons that I have in a variety of colors that I thought would look pretty against this yellow. So any buttons that you want to use up, some of those like single sort of oddball buttons, this is a great project for that. You'll also need an embroidery hoop. You can use any size you like. I'm going to be using a 6-inch embroidery hoop. It's 6 inches across. Now mine is wood. It has the inner ring and the tightening screw at the top. They also come in fun plastic colors as well. So whatever you have is great. And then you're going to need a piece of scrap fabric that we're going to be putting in the hoop to get us started. You'll just need it to be slightly larger than the size of your hoop, okay? So let's kind of slide all this over. We're going to get our hoop set up first. So what you'll want to do is pop out this ring, and then you're going to grab your fabric and kind of lay it out. You can iron it first if you like. It's up to you, okay? So get it positioned the way you want, and I'm going to go down in the corner so I still have all of this to use for another project. And we want about, I would say like an inch or two all around it, just so we have a little bit to work with here. And then while it's still laying like this, we're just going to go ahead and cut around this hoop here, okay? I'm just going to do a square. We can kind of trim it up later, okay? And so we can use this for another project. And then what we're going to do is grab our hoop, our outer ring of our hoop, and we're going to just place it over like this. And you can see it kind of straightens out the fabric a little bit, but you want to pull it nice and taut and kind of tighten and tug. Whoops. Let's try that again. We're going to kind of do this like tightening and tugging until it gets really, really taut, okay? So just tighten it up a little bit, give it a nice gentle tug all the way around with the fabric. Okay, so you got a nice taut surface to work on, okay? And then give it a really strong tightening up. All right, now we can sort of trim this now, or we can trim it later. I'm just going to knock a little bit off of the edges just so it's not so cumbersome to work with, okay? So I'm just going to give it a little trim all the way around with my scissors. And whenever you're trimming fabric, it helps to have a nice, large, sharp pair of scissors. That makes just such a world of difference. Okay, and we're going to sort of deal with this when we're done to all these little edges, but just to get the bulk of it out of the way while we work. Okay, so grab any button you like. I'm just going to grab this pretty pink one here and a needle. And we're going to sew the first one on together and then kind of depart, and you can work on the rest on your own, okay? So these embroidery floss skeins come in a bundle like this, and you'll find an end. Keep the bands on. It'll keep it together and keep it from getting tangled, and just kind of pull as you work, okay? So pull a piece of the floss, I would say this is about 8 inches. Thread your needle with a tail. So just thread it with a little tail like that. And then what you're going to do is put your button wherever you like. We're going to try and cover this whole thing with buttons, okay? So put your button wherever you like, and then you're just going to take your needle and you're going to come up from the back of your work here, come through, and then go almost through, but leave a little tail, and then go back down. And we're going to do this a couple of times, okay? So come up through the bottom. You might need to sort of wiggle your needle around and get it in the right spot. Come up, back down, and just do that a couple of times so it's nice and secure. Now this is art that's going to be hanging on the wall. It's not going to be something you wear, so just a few passes is fine, okay? Just like that, okay? Now flip it over. You can remove your needle at this time. And what you're going to do is simply tie this, give it a couple of nice strong knots just to keep it in place. And you want it to be nice and secure because you don't want your buttons to sort of sag. And then what you want to do, this is the back of your work, so nobody's going to see it. It's going to be against the wall. Just trim it so that a little bit remains in the back here, okay? And when you flip it, you won't be able to see it, okay? So here is our first button, and it looks great, okay? So what you want to do is grab the rest of your buttons and just repeat. So what I would recommend is kind of mix up the sizes. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see better. You want to mix up the sizes. So you don't want like all the big ones on one side. And you also want to mix up the colors. So, you know, if we have some pink over here, maybe we sort of spread it around. And you can sort of position them in place before you sew them down. And it's totally up to you. So go ahead and start sewing all your buttons on until you cover it. And we will rejoin and work on finishing up the back of our piece here to get it ready for hanging on the wall. So when you're finished with your button art, you can either take these edges here and flip over and glue them to the back, or you can simply just take a pair of scissors and just trim the edges, okay? So just go all around, and what I like to do is just kind of get the excess off first, and then you can sort of go back and fine tune things a little bit. See how it's a little bit choppy looking? But this is super easy. It just takes a second, and you can get all that extra fabric off. If you like the look of it, you could, of course, leave that on there too. But if you just want to like give it a quick little trim, you can do that as well. So I went ahead and trimmed all the edges, and it looks really pretty. It's ready to hang. So that is how you make this fun button art. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Sparkle and Splatter video updates.